Did you know that people with ADHD or autism are more likely to become addicted than the average neurotypical person? This can be due to feeling misunderstood by people, to feeling lonely, or maybe it's because they've been seeking dopamine from something that is bringing them comfort in that moment. I'm going to talk about my journey with alcohol addiction now, so if you're interested in hearing that, keep watching. I'm Cath, I'm 40, and this year I was diagnosed with combined type ADHD. My childhood was difficult. I experienced a lot of childhood trauma growing up, and some of it was like typical trauma that a lot of people experience, like parents getting divorced, living in a broken home, things like that. But there were traumas I experienced that most people will never experience, and they impacted me a lot. So growing up, I was always so shy, and bearing in mind I obviously had undiagnosed ADHD, potentially undiagnosed autism, and I grew up feeling worthless. I had pretty much non-existent self-esteem. I was a very caring person, and as a result of that, people always took my kindness for weakness, and people always walked all over me, and I didn't stick up for myself because I had no self-esteem and I was shy. So growing up, I had to grow up fast. I didn't get to be a carefree child, and as a result of that, I felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. The first time I tasted alcohol, I was 12 years old. We were in Spain and we were sat outside watching the evening entertainment, and I started finishing off leftover drinks on the table, and I obviously drank enough to get drunk. And I remember that feeling like it was yesterday. I thought for the first time in my life, I didn't feel shy, I didn't feel awkward, I felt confident, and I loved that feeling. I felt like I could talk to people easily, and it was kind of like, it felt like the best feeling ever. And I thought, oh, I love this so much. So that was kind of the first, it was a positive impression of alcohol in my mind. So when, over the years, as I grew up as a teenager, I drank on the streets with my friends, and it's slightly less common nowadays, but my generation back then and earlier generations, it was a lot more common. So it was what people did, and so we would kind of have this way of getting away with it. So we would go out early, we would pay someone to go in and get us our alcohol into a shop, someone, an adult who was willing to do it, and we would drink early so we could have that experience, sober up a little bit in time to go in, and in time for when we had to be in. And most of the time we got away with it. Some of the times though, we ended up in situations that our parents ended up finding out. So that was kind of my life as a teenager, and I needed that to socialise. I needed to, so I could speak to people. I relied on alcohol to give me that confidence to do that, and I look forward to every weekend because it gave me that chance to just come out my shell a bit, something that I really struggled with. So fast forward to when I was 18, I at the time, again, still had undiagnosed ADHD, potentially undiagnosed autism, and I definitely had at that time undiagnosed depression, which I didn't know about. My life had been pretty difficult, and it was still pretty difficult. My family life was very strained, and something happened when I was 18 that kind of was the tipping point for me. And it was something that was emotionally really difficult for me to deal with, and I couldn't, the way I was feeling was so difficult and so painful that it was just like the final straw on top of a lifetime of already difficult things. So I went from weekend kind of social drinking to very unhealthy drinking. And at the time I had 3 jobs working in 3 different pubs. I was also studying beauty therapy at college, and I was functioning okay, but I started drinking all of those other times when I wasn't in work or college. I was drunk. I was drinking in my bedroom at home. I was drinking in the morning. I was drinking in the night. I was going to the pub on my own. Or if I couldn't find someone to go to the pub with me, I'd just go on my own. I would wake up in the morning, get ready, wait for the pub to open so I could go there. I was just, or if not, I would just go to the shop, buy some wine and drink it in my room. And I was in this really vicious cycle of, it was like work, college, drink. So literally, because of the different shifts that I worked, and because I worked in pubs, it gave me like good opportunities to drink. So like towards the end of the night when we were allowed a break, I would have a drink on my break, and that would kind of be the start of the drinking of that night. I was struggling a lot. Like my mental health, I didn't even realise how much my mental health was struggling, but even at the time, even though I was consumed by alcohol, I just knew I was in pain, like emotional pain, and I needed to not feel that. So I'd gone from using alcohol for confidence to using it to numb my feelings completely. And it worked temporarily. It kind of, in the moment while I was drunk, it helped me to forget about things. But then obviously when it wore off, it came back with a vengeance, as did the hangovers, as did the dark thoughts. And I was just in this cycle. I, at that time, felt so lonely. Things were already very strained with my family, and I felt misunderstood by friends. I felt like I was on my own, and that kind of drove me to drink more. So basically I'd got to a point where it had been months of, at first I was functioning, at first I was working, I was going to college, but then I started phoning in sick at work. I would miss days of college, and then I started just missing college completely. And I remember one day my college tutor rang, and I think some of my college friends had kind of gave her a rough explanation why I hadn't been in, and that was dealing with something. And she rang me up and she said, I know you're going through a difficult time, but are you really going to throw everything away because you've worked so hard? And at that point I'd done like over a year and a half in college. I'd done my level 2 in beauty therapy, and I'd almost finished my level 3. I only had a few more assignments to do. And at the time on the phone, I just didn't care. Like, I didn't care, because all I wanted to do was be drunk. And I said to her, thanks for ringing, but I don't know what I'm going to do. So when I came off the phone, nothing had changed for me. But in the days after that, I started thinking, and I was thinking, I have worked hard, and I knew that I needed to get out of the situation I was in. And in order to do that, I needed a job. I needed a job where I could just walk in and say, right, I've got the qualifications for this job, I can do it. And I was so close to having that. So I decided, no, I'm not going to throw it all away. So what I did was I started going back to college, and I pushed my drinking to the weekends, like probably to like Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, because that is seen as more socially acceptable. So I kind of went on like this, weekend drinking. Again, everyone else saw it as normal because that's what people do. They go out to pubs and clubs and they get drunk, and that's normal. So I carried on like this. I met my husband when we were 19, and again carried on with this weekend drinking. When I was 21, I got pregnant with my oldest daughter, and of course I stopped drinking. I wasn't going to drink while I was pregnant. And like I had my daughter, and then after that, it was almost like, it almost reset me slightly, and then I would only drink if we went out, you know, every now and then. Obviously, like, as new parents, you're not going out all the time, so I would just drink whenever, you know, whenever we did go out, and while my daughter was being minded by someone in the family. The next day, my hangovers were always horrendous, even if I'd only had small amounts of alcohol. They'd always been like that since like my early 20s. I could have literally one glass of wine and feel worse the next day than some of my friends who drank a whole bottle of wine to themselves. So the next day I'd be in bed all day because if I moved I'd be sick. The headaches were so bad. And then for days after, my mental health would be so much worse. And this was kind of my cycle throughout my 20s, and then I'd feel so guilty as well. That's the thing. I've now obviously got 2 daughters, and I'd feel guilty for being in bed all day because I've missed out on a day of being able to take them out somewhere, or they'd be like, "Are you okay, Mum? Are you okay?" And I'd caused that myself. That it was self-inflicted why I was feeling that way, and I would feel so much guilt about it. So when I was 30, I was diagnosed with depression, and I will talk about that and the more mental health side of things in another video. At that point, I did not even though I knew I felt sad and I was struggling, I didn't know I had depression, even though my thoughts at that point were really dark. I did not know. And I then knew when I was diagnosed with depression, I'd felt like that since I was a child. So I knew I'd had depression since I was a child. And at that point, that day that I did go to the doctors and I was diagnosed with depression, that was the darkest day of my life, but also one of the best days of my life, because it gave me hope and it made me feel like I had a second chance at life. So I started changing everything about my life. I changed the way I ate. I changed what I surrounded myself with. I started, you know, I am going to talk about all this, but even then I didn't stop drinking at that point. And I carried on with this social drinking cycle, feeling awful the next day, just again every now and then, not that often. Then it came to 2019 and I went on a family holiday, me and my husband and my 2 daughters. We went to Gran Canaria, and I decided that I wasn't going to drink on this holiday. So I went for most of the holiday. I think we'd gone for 10 days, and I went for about 6 days, I think I'd gone without drinking. And then one night we were in an Irish bar, and I'm of Irish heritage, and I've been like brought up loving Irish music, and like I just love it so much. And we were in an Irish bar and I felt awkward because I just wanted to relax and I wanted to just be able to enjoy myself, and I didn't, and I still had that stigma of like not drinking. I felt awkward without drinking. And I was so on edge that I just went and got a glass of wine, and the moment that was in my hand, even before I'd even had a sip of it, I relaxed. And I felt like, and then I thought, wow, this is a bit weird. This is like a bit psychological. But still, I drank the wine. I enjoyed myself. But then the next day, I felt awful, and I thought it wasn't worth it. It just wasn't. So, and then you would think I would learn, and I still didn't stop drinking then. So fast forward a few months later, it was November of the same year, 2019, and me and my husband were invited to the evening of a wedding. And at first I thought, I'm gonna drive. And also at this point, I'd kind of decided that wine makes me feel awful, so I'd kind of switched to vodka. For some reason, vodka as a person, I could tolerate it more, and I didn't get drunk off vodka for a long time. Like, it would take me a lot of vodka to get me drunk, and I didn't feel as awful off vodka as I did on wine. So anyway, this wedding, I decided I was going to drive, but then at the last minute, I changed my mind. I thought, no, I'm going to have a drink. So we went to the wedding, and I got vodka and orange, I think. And all night, I had that one glass of vodka, like one shot of vodka, in that glass, because I didn't want to overdo it. And then at the end of the night, I didn't feel that relaxed. I wasn't drunk, but I was annoyed with myself because I thought, I have just let this little tiny shot of clear liquid control me and control my night, and now we've got to pay for a taxi to go home when I could have just drove. So that was the night I quit drinking, and I haven't drank since then. So it'll be coming up to 5 years this November. So it's been like 4.5 years. Now, I've had to learn how to be okay, how to feel okay in social situations, like weddings, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm quite an introvert, and I'm not the person who chooses to go out all the time, but I've had to learn how to do that, and it's not been easy, and there are times when I still feel so awkward, but I'm learning, I'm kind of gradually getting through that. Like, if I go to a wedding and people are dancing, I can dance at a wedding, and even though I will feel awkward and I will be thinking, what am I doing with my arms? I don't know what to do with my arms. I will still dance, and that's kind of good for my ADHD, the hyperactive part of my ADHD, because it kind of releases energy for me. I find it hard when we're in sit-down situations. If you were in a pub with people drinking, and it's a bit boring because everyone's drinking and you're just sat there not drinking. And if you've got a good conversation, then that's brilliant. But I like really deep conversations. Not everyone else does. So unless I'm in a really deep conversation about something that is interesting to me, I find situations like that really difficult. I just feel awkward, and I just kind of sit there quietly. If people are just like doing small talk, that does bore me a bit. So I'm like, but I like those situations where I can be doing something like dancing or, things like that. That's how I can cope without drinking. I just want to say, if anyone is going through addiction at the moment, if anyone's experiencing addiction, please know that you're not on your own. And even though it might feel like the darkest time of your life, or you may not even realise that you have a problem, because I know I didn't. Even when I was drinking it so dangerously, in my mind the whole time I was thinking, I know I could stop if I wanted to, I just don't want to. And that's that addictive voice that keeps you addictive. I couldn't have stopped if I wanted to when I was in the depth of it, because I had no hope. It was only when I got that hope of thinking, right, okay, I'm going to finish my college course, and I'm going to use it to get a job out of it. That was the hope, just that little bit of hope that I needed. But when you're feeling hopeless, it can be so difficult. I was not in control of my drinking, and that voice, that inner voice that told me I was lying to me. So I know that you're probably experiencing that voice too. If you're watching this and you're currently struggling with addiction, please understand that if you're addicted to something, you're not in control of it. I do believe, this is my opinion, people may disagree, and that's fine. Quite often you hear about people saying, oh, addiction's a disease. I don't agree with that. I definitely agree that we can have genes that make us more prone to addiction. For example, obviously ADHD and autism genes, obviously ADHD people and autistic people are more prone to addiction. So there's the theory that genes can make you more addicted. But I do believe that with just those genes alone, somebody is not going to become addicted. I believe that addiction comes from trauma, from feeling lonely, and from feeling misunderstood, or from a combination of all of that, like it was for me. So just maybe understand that there may be things in your life, unhealed trauma, that maybe you could speak to someone about. I will try and link some numbers for addiction charities below, but obviously depending on the country you're watching it from, I'm sorry if I don't include your country, but I'll do my best to see what I can do. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found this video valuable. If you have, please like and subscribe. Thank you.